welcome to the Deep Dive.
Thanks for having me.
So today we are looking at the exact cosmic roadmap for the week of March 9 to March 15th, 2026.
Yes, we are.
And I want to be clear right up front. The mission for this particular exploration is, well, it's highly strategic.
Right, we're not just doing generalized daily affirmations here.
Exactly. No vague platitudes.
Yeah.
We've synthesized the astrological data for this specific week, and our goal is to extract the most practical, actionable insights so you can navigate the next 7 days with a distinct edge.
Because astrology at this level of application is essentially a highly specific weather report.
A weather report for human behavior, basically.
Yeah, exactly. It tracks emotional momentum. When you know the underlying currents of the week, when you can anticipate the precise friction points and leverage the exact moments of flow, you stop swimming against the tide.
You actually operate with intention.
Precisely. And looking at the transits for this week, I mean, the atmospheric pressure is undeniably intense.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because there is a dominating gravitational force hovering over this entire week.
The Virgo full moon.
Yes, the Virgo full moon. It casts this very specific, highly analytical spotlight over every single transit we're going to dissect today.
It's the central architectural pillar of the week, really.
Right.
Based on the data, this Virgo full moon is obviously going to activate different houses for every single sign, triggering completely different life sectors for you depending on your chart.
But the core themes are universal.
They are. The functional themes of a Virgo full moon are culmination, uncompromising truth-telling, and a kind of harsh practical reality.
It's not a gentle energy.
No, not at all. Any full moon represents a boiling point, right? It's the moment the subsurface tension finally breaks the surface.
But a full moon in Virgo is fundamentally different from, say, a chaotic emotional purge in a water sign.
Exactly. It's highly pragmatic. It's the universe effectively handing you a red pen and demanding an immediate, unsentimental audit of your life.
Just going through and crossing things out.
Literally. It wants to know what is yielding a return on investment and what needs to be edited out immediately.
And that brings up a critical point about how to actually use this forecast. If you just let a Virgo full moon happen to you,
it's gonna hurt.
Yeah, that demand for a life audit can feel like a sudden, overwhelming performance review that you just didn't study for.
Right. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the strategy is about preemptive adaptation.
Taking control early.
Exactly. You know the energy of this week is going to force lingering, inefficient issues to a head. If you operate passively, you will likely feel scrutinized and overwhelmed by the sudden demand for logistical truth.
But if you walk into Monday knowing that culmination and rigorous editing are the mandate, you take control of the narrative.
You wield the red pen yourself.
I love that. So we're going to map out the entire zodiac, segment by segment.
Let's do it.
We'll isolate the specific focus for your sign, the exact planetary mechanics driving the energy, and the strategic advice on how to operate within it.
Grounding the energy right out of the gate.
Exactly. Part 1, we're looking at Aries, Taurus, and Gemini. Starting with Aries, the data points to a massive focus on routine and refinement.
For anyone operating with strong Aries placements, the week begins with a heavy emphasis on the microstructures of daily life.
The 6th house stuff.
Right. The Virgo full moon is landing squarely in their 6th house of wellness and daily labor. The immediate implication here is that a specific draining habit is hitting its absolute breaking point.
But practically speaking, breaking a habit is notoriously difficult. If an Aries is dealing with this 6th house culmination, we're talking about the insidious little things, aren't we?
Oh, totally. Doom scrolling until 2 in the morning.
Or agreeing to endless low-priority meetings.
Yes. Or skipping meals to push through a project and then crashing hard at 3 p.m.
The transit is essentially saying the runway for that behavior has run out.
The runway has completely run out, and the friction is drastically compounded by the specific transit hitting Aries early in the week.
Mercury in Pisces forming a hard square to Mars.
Right. Mars, of course, is the planetary ruler of Aries. It's their engine. It demands forward momentum, decisive action, and conquest.
But Mercury is heavily submerged in Pisces, creating that classic square tension.
The forecast explicitly flags this dynamic as creating severe mental fog.
Which is arguably the worst possible condition for Aries energy.
Absolutely.
Aries wants a clear target to charge at. If you put them in a thick mental fog, they don't slow down, they just charge blindly.
Exactly. You have the raw kinetic tension of Mars fighting against the complete lack of visibility from Mercury in Pisces. It's all engine, no steering wheel.
That's a dangerous combination.
Very. You cannot see the structural reality of a situation clearly under this specific square. This is why the strategic warning for the early part of the week is so rigid.
Absolutely do not rush into contracts or binding agreements.
Right.
But I want to push back on that slightly, though.
Okay, sure.
If an Aries is in the middle of a high-stakes negotiation, they can't always just put a pin in it because their astrology app says their brain is foggy.
Fair point.
What happens if they force it?
If they force it under a Mercury-Mars square from Pisces, the probability of missing the fine print is huge.
Misinterpreting a crucial liability clause.
Yeah, or projecting their own optimistic assumptions onto a deeply flawed agreement. The risk is exceptionally high. They are fighting the astrological weather.
So what's the workaround if the deadline is immovable?
The mitigation strategy is to heavily rely on a proxy.
Like a lawyer.
A lawyer, a trusted colleague, someone whose chart isn't currently blinded by that specific square. But ideally, they delay the signature.
Okay, so if they are delaying the big actions, but they still have all this restless, aggressive Mars energy building up, where do they put it?
The advice in the forecast is fascinating for this.
It suggests utilizing the weekend specifically for workspace decluttering. It notes that physical order creates mental peace.
Which is so true.
But let's be real, telling a highly agitated Aries to go organize their pens sounds almost insulting.
It sounds trivial until you understand the neurology of it.
Walk me through that.
When your internal landscape is chaotic, foggy, and completely obscured by that Pisces energy, you cannot cognitively brute force your way out of it.
You can't just command a foggy brain to suddenly produce sharp logic.
Exactly. But what you can do is manipulate your immediate external physical environment.
Getting rid of visual clutter.
Right. Visual clutter actively taxes the visual cortex and the working memory. By physically sorting documents, throwing away garbage, and systematically wiping down a desk, Aries is burning off that excess Mars kinetic energy.
While simultaneously removing micro-stressors from their visual field.
Precisely. It's somatic regulation disguised as a chore.
That's brilliant.
They are building a physical microcosm of order to signal to their central nervous system that internal order is also possible. It breaks the cycle of the mental fog.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
So Aries, if you hit Wednesday and the frustration is boiling over, step away from the contract and attack the physical clutter.
Clean the desk.
Now, if Aries is burning off mental fog through physical action, Taurus takes that grounded energy and applies it to something completely different.
Yes, for Taurus, the focus is purely on passion and expression.
The Virgo full moon is casting a brilliant light across the Taurus 5th house.
We're dealing with the sector of creativity, romance, play, and uninhibited joy.
The fun stuff.
The very fun stuff. The forecast presents a very specific diagnostic here. If Taurus has been playing it safe with a creative endeavor or a romantic interest, the universe is actively pushing them to push all their chips to the center of the table.
Which is an incredibly tall order for Taurus.
Oh, completely.
Their baseline setting is risk-aversion. They are ruled by Venus, so they love comfort, predictability, and the sure thing.
The known quantities.
Right. The idea of pitching a risky creative project that I get shot down or initiating a romantic conversation that could end in rejection, it goes against their core programming.
It does. But the 5th house doesn't reward risk aversion, and the Virgo full moon is stripping away the illusion that playing it safe is actually protecting them.
Right now, it's just stifling them.
Exactly. And the universe is backing this up with a massive transit. Venus is aligning perfectly with Uranus.
Okay, Venus dictates what Taurus values and how they magnetize their desires.
And Uranus is the great awakener. It's electricity, sudden disruption, and radical change.
When you mix the planet of comfort with the planet of sudden disruption, what does that actually look like in real time?
The data points to a sudden, pleasant surprise within their social circle.
Notice the word pleasant.
Yes, very important. Uranus transits can sometimes feel like an earthquake, but with Venus involved, this is a bolt of positive lightning.
An unexpected opening.
A chance encounter, a sudden stroke of luck in that 5th house arena.
But here is the catch with Uranus energy. It requires agility.
It really does.
If lightning strikes and a door suddenly swings open, but Taurus is rigidly sticking to their pre-planned schedule, they're going to miss it entirely.
And that perfectly frames the advice for this week.
The forecast explicitly tells Taurus to say yes to a last-minute invitation on Thursday or Friday.
Yes. And we need to talk about the psychology of the comfort zone here.
Let's do it.
For a lot of people, especially Earth signs, a sudden Thursday night invitation when they had already mentally planned to order takeout and decompress on the couch is viewed as a threat to their peace.
The inertia of the comfort zone is incredibly powerful. Oh, the urge to just stay in the sweatpants and ignore the text is going to be overwhelmingly strong.
But that inertia is exactly what the Venus-Uranus alignment is challenging.
They have to fight the sweatpants urge.
The universe is orchestrating a highly specific, serendipitous opening for them, but it cannot force them to walk through the door. Accepting that spontaneous invite is a necessary act of rebellion against their own stagnation.
They have to break the pattern to catch the lightning.
Exactly.
So Taurus, leave the sweatpants in the drawer this Thursday and Friday. You have a cosmic mandate to be in the room when the surprise happens.
Get out there.
Moving over to Gemini, the focus shifts away from the external social sphere and drills straight down into roots and foundations.
The Virgo full moon is pulling Gemini's usually scattered, hypersocial attention downward into the fourth house.
This is the IC, the absolute bottom of the chart.
Right. The forecast indicates culminations around finalizing a move, executing heavy home renovations, or navigating incredibly dense foundational family conversations.
And navigating anything foundational this week is going to be uniquely challenging for them because of their ruling planet.
Mercury.
Yes, Mercury is currently swimming through late degrees of Pisces. The data points out a severe dichotomy here. Their intuition is operating at absolute peak capacity, but their logic is completely skewed.
This is a vital transit to deconstruct. Gemini processes reality through data,
They are the ultimate communicators.
relying on facts, spreadsheets, and rapid-fire logic. Pisces operates on an entirely different frequency.
Much more emotional.
Right. Pisces processes reality through osmosis, emotional undercurrents, and nonverbal intuition. So in Gemini's operating system, Mercury is forced to run through Pisces water. Their usual analytical toolkit essentially glitches.
So what does that glitch look like if they're trying to, say, finalize a mortgage or negotiate a renovation contract?
If they look at the hard numbers, the clauses in the lease, or the logistical timeline, their brain will likely misinterpret the data. The logic center is compromised.
But the intuition is strong.
Extremely. Because Mercury is in Pisces, their gut feeling, that sudden, inexplicable full body knowing that a specific house is the right one or that a family dynamic needs to shift, is remarkably dialed in.
So what does this all mean for their actual strategy this week?
It's tricky.
How does a Gemini function if they need to secure a house but their logic is broken?
The strategy outlined in the forecast is an exercise in pinpoint timing. It says, trust the gut feeling regarding a professional or residential move right now, but physically wait until next week to sign the paperwork.
It's a masterclass in the strategic application of the pause.
Exactly.
Let me push back, just like with Aries. In a competitive housing market or a fast-moving corporate environment, if a Gemini says, I love this, but I'm going to wait 7 days to sign, they lose the opportunity.
That's a real risk.
How do they balance that?
It's about securing the intent without executing the final, irreversible legal binding.
So showing interest, maybe making an offer.
Right. They can make the verbal agreement, they can put down a refundable deposit, they can express complete enthusiasm, but they must engineer a bureaucratic delay for the final signature until Mercury moves out of this deeply skewed position.
Capture the brilliant intuitive insight immediately, but delay the logistical execution until your cognitive faculties are back online.
That is a phenomenal distinction, yes.
Awesome. Gemini, your gut is your compass this week, but keep the ink in the pen until the transit clears. All right, we're moving into part 2 of our analysis.
Navigating the inner world.
Yes. We'll look at Cancer, Leo, and Virgo. Starting with Cancer, the focus is intensely centered on communication and clarity.
The Virgo full moon is detonating right inside Cancer's third house.
The forecast describes a severe flurry of emails, rapid-fire phone calls, and dense local activity.
For a sign that naturally seeks emotional insulation and quiet, this massive spike in communicative demands is going to feel like an assault on their nervous system.
I just picture a totally chaotic inbox, a phone vibrating off the desk, and a completely fragmented to-do list.
It's a lot.
And the natural Cancerian response to that level of external noise is to retreat into their shell and shut it all out.
Retreating is their default, but there is a highly stabilizing transit occurring simultaneously that prevents them from short-circuiting.
Thank goodness.
The moon is forming a tight trine to Saturn. Because the moon rules Cancer, they feel every lunar aspect acutely.
And the trine is a very smooth aspect.
A trine is the most frictionless, harmonious aspect possible. And Saturn is the architect of structure, maturity, and boundaries.
So how does Saturn's structure interact with the full moon's chaotic flurry?
The forecast uses the term emotional discipline, which is perfectly accurate. Saturn acts as an internal anchor.
It keeps him from drowning in the inbox.
Exactly.
Right.
It allows Cancer to look at that terrifying inbox and systematically categorize it without experiencing a spike in cortisol. They aren't reacting to every single notification with emotional panic.
They actually have the psychological bandwidth to separate the urgent from the irrelevant.
Yes, and the data suggests this newfound emotional discipline actually has a very specific application.
Resolving a long-standing misunderstanding with a sibling, a neighbor, or someone in their immediate local environment.
Right. When Cancer operates without that Saturnian anchor, they tend to communicate from a place of deep feeling, which can sometimes muddy the waters in a conflict.
It gets too personal.
But with this trine, they have the clarity to communicate facts. They can address an old grievance objectively, which allows for actual permanent resolution in that third house sphere.
Which leads directly into the core advice for Cancer this week. Because their mind is processing information at such a rapid, clear clip, the forecast says they must aggressively write down their ideas.
Capture everything.
It explicitly notes that their aha moments this week are pure gold.
But why is writing them down so critical? Why wouldn't they just remember them?
Because of the working memory limitations during a high-stimulus transit.
There's just too much incoming data.
Exactly. The third house flurry means their brain is processing an unprecedented volume of data. When you are filtering that much noise, brilliant, lateral thinking insights will flash through the consciousness like lightning and then be immediately overwritten by the next incoming email.
So if Cancer doesn't implement a hard capture system, a dedicated notebook, aggressive use of voice memos, a digital second brain, they will lose highly lucrative or profoundly useful solutions.
The chaos isn't just noise, it's dense with data.
Cancer, do not trust your memory this week. Capture everything.
On to Leo. Moving over to Leo, I'll just state the thesis up front. For Leo, this week is entirely about the money.
The Virgo full moon is bringing a massive culmination to Leo's second house.
This is the bedrock of personal income, material resources, and self-worth.
The practical directives here are incredibly blunt.
They really are. The forecast says this is the optimal window to ruthlessly review budgets, audit expenses, and most importantly, demand the raise they have been working toward.
The full moon is illuminating the actual value they bring to the table. If the work has been done, this is the week to extract the monetary recognition.
It is, but there is a severe psychological trap embedded in the transits that Leo has to actively navigate.
Yes, the Sun, which is Leo's planetary ruler and the sword of their core vitality, is currently in Pisces, and it is conjunct Neptune.
Neptune is the planet of boundlessness, illusion, and extreme empathy.
Right. When Leo's core identity merges with Neptunian energy, the forecast warns they are going to feel incredibly, almost painfully, extra sensitive.
For Leo, a sign that projects such impenetrable confidence and radiance, feeling their energetic boundaries dissolve like that has to be incredibly disorienting.
This raises an important question regarding how we compensate for emotional vulnerability.
How so?
Well, when Leo feels that Neptunian exposure, when they feel misunderstood, slightly invisible, or just emotionally raw, they immediately look for external mechanisms to rebuild their armor.
And because the full moon is lighting up the second house of material possessions, the risk of misdirected coping mechanisms is astronomical.
Which perfectly explains the stern warning in the advice: absolutely avoid retail therapy.
We really need to break down the mechanics of retail therapy here. It's so universal.
It really is.
You feel emotionally depleted, so you go online, you find a luxury item, and you buy it. You are literally attempting to purchase a feeling of security or elevated status to counteract the vulnerability.
It's a dopamine loop, and it's an attempt to use a second house physical solution to solve a 12th house Neptunian problem.
It is mathematically guaranteed to fail.
The neurological reward of the purchase evaporates the second the transaction is complete.
Leaving Leo with the exact same emotional rawness.
But now, with a depleted bank account right at the exact moment, the full moon is demanding financial rigorousness.
The friction there is intense. So how do they self-soothe without spending the money?
The forecast directs them to focus entirely on what they already possess. It's a call for radical, militant gratitude.
Gratitude is an anchoring practice.
It pulls Leo out of the Neptunian hallucination that acquiring one more thing will finally make me feel secure. It forcibly grounds them in the reality of their current material abundance.
Leo, empty the online shopping cart immediately. Have the hard conversation about your salary, but protect your current assets at all cost.
Now for Virgo.
All right, let's look at Virgo. And the energy here is massive. The forecast literally frames this as Virgo's Super Bowl week.
It is the absolute pinnacle of their astrological cycle. The full moon is culminating in their own sign, directly illuminating their first house of identity, physical vitality, and personal trajectory.
This is a profound inflection point.
The language used in the data is striking. It says Virgo is actively shedding an old version of themselves to make room for the new.
That isn't just about tweaking a morning routine. We are talking about a fundamental identity evolution.
Realizing that the architecture of who you were 6 months ago can no longer house who you are today.
But shedding an identity is biologically and psychologically taxing. And we see the fallout of that in the specific physical transits.
With the moon peaking in their first house, their emotional processing will be running at absolute maximum capacity, which the forecast warns will lead to unusual, profound fatigue.
I can see a major issue here. Virgo is the archetype of relentless productivity and service.
Right.
If a Virgo wakes up feeling inexplicably exhausted, their immediate instinct isn't to rest.
Oh, no, never.
Their instinct is to self-criticize, assume they are failing, drink 4 espressos, and try to brute force their way through the to-do list.
Which would be catastrophic for their nervous system this week. We have to clearly establish the mind-body connection here.
Explain that connection.
When you are undergoing a massive psychological update, when you are severing old neural pathways associated with past identities and forging new ones, your brain consumes an exorbitant amount of physical caloric energy.
They aren't tired because they're lazy.
No, they are tired because their internal operating system is running a massive background update. If they try to bypass the fatigue with caffeine, the system will simply crash.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The strategic advice entirely reframes how they should view this period.
Yes.
The forecast calls this their harvest moment, and it asks them to explicitly reflect back to last September.
Last September was the Virgo new moon. In agricultural astrology, the new moon is the dark soil where the seed is planted and the intention is set.
And now, precisely 6 months later, the full moon provides the illumination of the harvest. The crop has fully matured.
But Virgos are notoriously terrible at celebrating their own harvest, aren't they?
They really are. They are chronically forward-looking. A Virgo will harvest an incredible field of wheat, and instead of taking a moment to appreciate the yield, they immediately start worrying about the pH balance of the soil for the next planting season.
The universe is issuing a hard stop. It is demanding that they sit down in the field they just grew, acknowledge their own monumental evolution over the past 6 months, and actually internalize their success before looking at the next mountain.
Virgo, the fatigue is the proof of your growth. Rest, reflect, and take the win.
Okay, part 3.
Yes, we are crossing into part 3, seeking balance and recognition. Let's examine the data for Libra.
For Libra, the overarching focus of the week is closure, deep healing, and psychological retreat.
The forecast draws a very sharp contrast here. While the rest of the zodiac is frenetically busy managing third-house flurries or 10th-house career peaks, Libra is being actively called to step off the grid.
The Virgo full moon is moving through their 12th house, which is the realm of the subconscious, the hidden, and the unresolved.
And the data introduces a highly dramatic premise here. It says, secrets may come to light.
It sounds theatrical, but the 12th house operates as the psychological basement.
The repository for everything we've repressed.
Every emotion, intuition, or uncomfortable truth we repressed because we didn't have the bandwidth to deal with it at the time. When the harsh, practical light of a Virgo full moon hits that basement, the repression fails.
Things you have been hiding from yourself or hidden dynamics in your periphery become undeniably visible.
And dealing with those sudden revelations is going to be incredibly complex because of the transit involving their ruling planet. Venus is currently moving through Aries.
Aries is Libra's exact astrological opposite.
This is a massive polarity point. Venus dictates how Libra seeks harmony and connection. But Aries is the architect of the sovereign warrior. It demands fierce autonomy and self-interest.
The forecast warns that Venus in Aries is demanding balance and partnerships, specifically cautioning Libra against the trap of losing yourself to please others.
I see the tension here. How does a Libra assert fierce Aries autonomy when their 12th house is simultaneously making them feel vulnerable, exhausted, and wanting to retreat?
That is the exact crucible of the week for them.
Libra's pathological need for external harmony often leads them to absorb a partner's stress or shrink their own boundaries just to keep the peace.
But with the 12th house demanding intense psychological processing, they literally do not have the energetic reserves to people-pleaser,
If they sacrifice their own need for a treat to keep someone else comfortable, they will fracture.
which makes the incredibly specific advice in the forecast make total sense. It prescribes a rigid requirement. Prioritize 8 solid hours of sleep and active meditation.
And it knows that their dreams will be highly vivid. Sleep is framed not just as rest, but as a critical operational necessity.
We culturally view sleep as a passive void.
But during a 12th house full moon, the sleep state is highly active. The brain is utilizing REM cycles to perform heavy psychological surgery.
The vivid dreams are the mechanism the subconscious uses to process those illuminated secrets.
Resolve the Aries-Libra relationship tensions and integrate the healing. If Libra compromises their sleep schedule to stay up late mediating someone else's crisis, they are actively interrupting their own healing process.
Libra, your bed is a non-negotiable boundary this week. Defend your rest.
Moving on to Scorpio.
The data points to a massive culmination regarding community and long-term macroscopic goals.
The Virgo full moon is heavily activating Scorpio's 11th house. This is the sector governing large networks, associations, and collective ambitions.
A forecast indicates that a major group initiative or organizational project is hitting its absolute apex right now.
But the truly fascinating aspect of this 11th house culmination isn't just the work itself, it's the social filtering that happens under the pressure.
The text notes that Scorpio will see clearly who their true friends are versus who is merely an acquaintance.
Scorpio operates on a baseline of intense scrutiny anyway. They don't do superficial connections well.
Group projects are the ultimate stress test for loyalty and competence.
Under the clarifying light of the Virgo full moon, the masks simply evaporate. Scorpio will see exactly who absorbs the pressure and contributes, and who strategically vanishes when the heavy lifting starts.
It's an incredibly efficient sorting mechanism.
And while this sharp, localized sorting is happening in their social networks, there is a much deeper tectonic shift happening in the background.
The forecast highlights Pluto transforming their home life. And it uses a very specific phrasing that we need to analyze. It says, change is slow but permanent.
Pluto is Scorpio's modern ruler, and it operates on deep generational time. It doesn't do quick fixes or sudden Uranus-style disruptions.
It is the slow, inexorable shifting of tectonic plates.
When Pluto moves through the foundational sectors of a chart, it fundamentally alters the concept of home, family dynamics, or emotional security.
But realistically, slow changes are agonizing. If you know the foundation of your life is shifting, but it's happening at a glacial pace, how do you not go crazy waiting for it to resolve?
You have to detach from the timeline. You cannot rush Pluto any more than you can rush continental drift.
You just have to trust the inevitability of the process.
And the way Scorpio maintains their sanity during that slow background shift is by taking highly strategic action in the foreground, specifically in that 11th house of community.
Which brings us to their precise tactical advice. The forecast identifies Wednesday as the highly optimal day for networking, specifically urging them to reach out to a mentor.
Why Wednesday? What is the strategic advantage of that exact window?
Wednesday is traditionally governed by Mercury. By midweek, the intense emotional culmination of the full moon has processed, leaving behind sharp, actionable clarity.
Scorpio has just ruthlessly filtered their social circle. They know who the deadweight is.
Reaching out to a mentor, someone who has already successfully navigated the long-term goals Scorpio is aiming for, is the pivot from filtering out the bad to actively investing in the good.
It aligns their ambition with proven expertise.
Scorpio, Wednesday is your strike day. Make the call, send the email, secure the mentor.
Let's bring the energy way up for Sagittarius.
The forecast is incredibly explosive here, focusing on career, public recognition, and massive professional shifts.
The Virgo full moon is detonating at the absolute highest point of their chart, the 10th house of legacy, authority, and public reputation.
The data is unequivocal. The hard work they've been doing in the dark is being dragged into the spotlight. They need to prepare for a highly visible public win.
For Sagittarius, a sign that thrives on expansion, scale, and being seen, a 10th house culmination is basically oxygen. It's the moment the trajectory finally matches the ambition.
It's an incredibly potent moment, but it is supercharged by a highly volatile transit. Mars, the planet of raw kinetic force, war, and stamina, is currently moving through Sagittarius.
Having Mars in your own sign is akin to having a nuclear reactor strapped to your back. The stamina for long, grueling hours is virtually limitless. They will feel completely invincible.
But the forecast issues a very specific, almost dire warning regarding that exact energy. It says they must meticulously watch their temper on Tuesday.
Tuesday is the day of the week ruled by Mars. So we have Mars energy compounding on top of a Mars transit, right as a massive public career peak is forming.
What's fascinating here is the physics of ambition.
Right. When Sagittarius is moving at terminal velocity toward a massive 10th house victory, their tolerance for inefficiency or incompetence drops to absolute zero.
I can see the danger. If a subordinate misses a deadline, or a client asks a redundant question on Tuesday, that massive reactor of Mars energy has nowhere to go but outward.
Exactly. And if that energy manifests as a public display of frustration or an explosive email, they risk completely torching the 10th house victory the full moon is trying to hand them.
They must consciously, ruthlessly channel that heat into the work itself, not at the people obstructing the work.
Channel the fire. Do not burn down the office. That is the mandate.
And the advice builds directly on this momentum. It tells Sagittarius to unequivocally step into the spotlight, explicitly stating that now is not the time for modesty.
This is a critical psychological hurdle. Even for a naturally bold sign like Sagittarius, actually receiving the massive recognition they asked for can induce a kind of vertigo.
Society heavily conditions us to perform humility.
When the spotlight hits, the instinct is to downplay it, to deflect the praise, or to attribute the success entirely to the team.
But the data is saying that performing humility right now is actually a strategic error.
Modesty in the 10th house during this specific transit is self-sabotage. The universe is offering them a platform of authority. If they shrink back, the universe will give the platform to someone else.
They have to tolerate the discomfort of being the focal point. They must stand in the light and claim ownership of their excellence.
Sagittarius, take the bow. Own the victory without apology.
We are now entering the final act, part 4. Big pictures and deep truths. Let's examine the data for Capricorn.
For Capricorn, the paradigm shifts entirely toward expansion and macroscopic philosophy.
The forecast shows the Virgo moon pushing them to look at the big picture. It specifically highlights areas like international travel plans, higher education, or securing advanced certifications.
This is a fascinating pivot because Capricorn is the ultimate archetype of the pragmatist. They are the mountain goat.
They usually focus with extreme tunnel vision on the very next rung of the corporate ladder, or the immediate logistical hurdle.
But this 9th house activation is forcing them to look at the entire topographical map, not just the rock in front of them.
And stepping out of that hyper-focused pragmatism to look at the vast horizon can induce anxiety for a Capricorn. They like control.
But the data shows they are completely supported by the steady, grounding influence of Saturn, the ruling planet. The text notes that Saturn acts as an anchor, grounding the potentially chaotic energy of the full moon's expansion.
I want to dig into that dynamic because it sounds paradoxical. If you are trying to expand your horizons and think massive big-picture thoughts, doesn't the structural rule-bound nature of Saturn restrict you?
It's the paradox of boundaries, which is essential to understand Capricorn's success. Think of the physics of a kite.
A kite.
Yeah, a kite can only catch the wind, ascend into the sky, and explore the expanse because it is firmly tethered to the ground by a string.
The string is the structure.
If you sever the string, the kite doesn't fly higher into the stratosphere. It loses its tension and crashes chaotically to the ground.
That's a brilliant way to conceptualize it. Saturn is the string.
Exactly. Because Capricorn has spent so much time building an ironclad foundation, because their finances are managed, their routines are set, their contingency plans are formulated, they are structurally safe to take a massive risk.
The chaotic, expansive energy of the 9th house might untether another sign, but Capricorn has the architectural integrity to handle the growth,
which seamlessly translates into their strategic advice. The forecast instructs them to actively look for a solution outside of their usual box.
The answer to whatever problem they are facing right now lies in the unfamiliar.
Capricorn relies heavily on precedent. If they face a problem, their default is to look at the historical data, see what worked in the past, and replicate the protocol.
But 9th house expansion means the old protocols are obsolete.
The solution won't be found in their standard operating procedures. They must solicit advice from a completely different industry, research a foreign methodology, or engage with a philosophy they usually dismiss.
The breakthrough requires entirely new data. Capricorn, abandon the precedent. The answer is in the unknown.
Now, moving to Aquarius.
Yes, we're going to lower the tone significantly here because the energetic focus plunges into incredibly deep, complex territory.
The Virgo full moon is landing directly in the Aquarius 8th house. This is the sector of profound transformation, psychological depths, and the complexities of shared assets.
The forecast is explicit, listing taxes, deep debts, and the intricacies of shared intimacy.
It's the house of entanglements. The text demands radical, uncompromising honesty about what is owed. And we aren't just talking about the IRS or mortgage, are we?
No, the financial debts are often just the surface manifestation. The eighth house demands a ledger balancing of emotional and psychological debts.
Are you carrying the psychological baggage for a partner? Are you withholding true intimacy due to an unacknowledged resentment? Are there power dynamics in your relationship that have become toxic?
The radical honesty required to untangle these webs is deeply intimidating.
It sounds terrifying, frankly, but the forecast immediately introduces a massive cosmic safety net via the transits. It highlights Jupiter's involvement.
Guaranteeing that even as the intensity of these confrontations peaks, the outcome will ultimately tilt in their favor.
Jupiter is the great benefic. It's the planet of luck, grace, and expansion. In this context, it acts as a massive shock absorber.
Aquarius might have to initiate a terrifying conversation about tripling debt or face a deeply uncomfortable truth about their romantic intimacy. The friction will be immense.
But Jupiter's presence is a promise that they will not be destroyed by the confrontation. The truth will ultimately liberate them and improve their standing.
Knowing that the safety net is there makes the psychological advice possible to execute. The forecast tells Aquarius they must face their shadow self, noting that acknowledging a fear is the absolute first step to conquering it.
Let's define the shadow in this context.
The concept of the shadow is the collection of our repressed desires, our unsavory traits, our deep-seated shames, and our irrational fears.
Everything we push into the dark because we deem it unacceptable to our conscious identity. We expend massive amounts of psychic energy keeping the shadow hidden.
But the eighth house full moon is shining a high-beam flashlight directly into that darkness.
But the instinct is to say, if I admit I'm terrified of financial ruin, or if I admit I'm deeply jealous, aren't I giving that fear more power?
It's the exact opposite. A shadow can only control your behavior when it operates in the subconscious dark.
When you drag it into the light of conscious awareness and articulate it, when you say, I am terrified of being abandoned, or I feel intense shame about this debt, you strip the fear of its leverage.
You objectify it. And the moment you name it, Jupiter's protective energy rushes in to begin the dissolution process.
Aquarius, your mandate is simple but requires immense courage. Name the fear out loud. Break the silence.
Finally, we arrive at our last sign, Pisces.
For Pisces, the focus is entirely on relationships, mirroring, and intense external dynamics. The full moon is culminating in Virgo, which is the polarity point, the exact opposite sign of Pisces.
This concentrates the entirety of the lunar energy into the Pisces' 7th house of partnerships.
The forecast uses the most dramatic language of the entire week for this. It states that a key relationship, whether it is a marriage, a romantic partnership, or foundational business alliance, is hitting a critical make-or-break moment.
The tension is absolute.
It is the ultimate mirror effect. The 7th house shows us what we project onto others and the contracts we agree to.
If a partnership is reaching a make-or-break crucible under a Virgo full moon, it is because the romanticized delusions and the unstated assumptions have been forcefully stripped away by Virgo's demand for cold, practical reality.
Pisces can no longer sustain the fantasy version of the relationship. They must deal with the logistical reality of the person sitting across from them.
And confronting harsh logistical reality is notoriously difficult for Pisces under normal circumstances, but it's exceptionally dangerous right now because of their specific transits.
The forecast analyzes the Sun and Neptune sitting together in Pisces. It notes this alignment makes Pisces incredibly magnetic, drawing people toward them, but internally they are severely distracted.
This is a complex duality to navigate. Neptune is their ruling planet, the ocean of dreams, empathy, and boundless connection.
With the Sun amplifying it, Pisces is projecting a highly alluring, ethereal energy. People will be clamoring for their attention.
But internally, Pisces is drifting. Their head is submerged in their own rich emotional currents, daydreams, and avoidant fantasies.
So paint the picture of the danger here. A vital relationship is at a breaking point, demanding hyper-present reality, but Pisces is internally drifting out to sea.
If they succumb to the Neptunian distraction, they will fundamentally misread the crisis. They will miss the subtle cues, the unsaid frustrations, or the critical piece of logistical information that will actually determine whether the relationship survives or fractures.
Which brings a crushing urgency to the strategic advice. The forecast dictates listen more than you speak. It explicitly promises that someone close has something vital to share.
But let's get practical. How does a Pisces, whose ruling planet is actively dragging them into a fog of distraction, force themselves to actively listen?
It requires militant behavioral interventions. They cannot rely on just trying to focus. They need to remove physical distractors, put the phone in another room during the conversation.
Maintain unbroken eye contact, which forces the brain to stay anchored in the physical space.
And they must utilize active mirroring. When the partner speaks, Pisces should not be formulating their defense or drifting into a tangential thought. They need to synthesize and repeat back what was said.
Like saying, what I'm hearing you say is that you need X.
That mechanical act of repetition forces their cognitive functions to remain engaged with the seventh house reality.
Pisces, your absolute priority this week is to be an empty, highly attentive vessel for your partner's truth. Anchor yourself to their words. Do not drift.
Wow, we made it through all 12.
Well, we have fully mapped the terrain of the zodiac. Let's pull all of this data together. Across all 12 signs, from the first house to the 12th, the week of March 9 to March 15th is defined by inescapable illumination, extreme emotional peaks, and forced necessary adjustments.
The Virgo full moon is sparing absolutely no one from its rigorous demand for truth and practicality.
The variables change, but the equation remains the same. Whether it's Aries needing to aggressively declutter their environment to bypass mental fog, Scorpio utilizing Wednesday to separate true allies from liabilities, or Aquarius braving the dark to face their shadow self, the ultimate objective is clarity achieved through culmination.
This level of astrological forecasting isn't about fortune-telling. It is a highly evolved tool for situational awareness. It completely removes the element of surprise.
When the friction hits this week, you do not have to operate as a victim of circumstance.
You can recognize the specific transit at play, understand the developmental purpose behind the friction, and execute your strategy with precision.
And that is the exact advantage we aim to provide. We want to ensure that whether you are actively shedding an obsolete identity like Virgo, standing unapologetically in the career spotlight like Sagittarius, or enforcing severe boundaries to protect your psychological rest like Libra, you are walking into Monday equipped with the ultimate cosmic playbook.
You have the strategic insight to bypass the fog, the structural discipline to process the flurry, and the agility to catch the lightning.
But before we close this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final, highly provocative thought to mull over as you navigate the days ahead. It builds directly on the mechanics of tension and culmination we've been analyzing. We've spent the last hour discussing how transits like Mercury violently squaring Mars, or the intense, hypercritical light of a Virgo full moon, create immense friction, fatigue, and systemic pressure.
A lot of pressure.
But what if we completely reframe the purpose of that friction? What if that friction isn't a cosmic obstacle at all? What if the universe specifically introduces chaotic tension to shatter the very habits, relationships, and routines that you have subconsciously outgrown but have been too terrified to dismantle yourself?
That's a powerful reframe.
Look closely at the absolute biggest source of frustration you encounter this week. Is it actually blocking your path, or is the friction desperately trying to redirect you toward a fundamentally better one?